surviving cancer and then finally fulfilling the dream of becoming parents. That is the story for Sam and Hayley Jackson, and they are my guests today here on Hope, Faith, and Infertility, a podcast of Southeastern Fertility in Knoxville, Tennessee, southeasternfertility.org if you want to learn more about us. I'm Mark Mellinger, your host. It is so good to have you two with me, and really I should say you four, because your twin boys, Chris and Carter, as people who will see the video version of the podcast will know, are with you today. Good to see you, Sam and Hayley.
Good to see you.
What a great story you have. And let's just start with what I was talking about a moment ago, and we'll go from there. Sam, you are a cancer survivor, and that is so hard. It's touched all of our families in numerous ways, but sort of walk me through that journey. That was a big part of your story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kind of let Hayley talk about, our fertility journey and when we started trying and everything. But in the midst of us beginning our journey to try to have children, unfortunately, I found out in August of 2019 that I had testicular cancer. Kind of insult to injury in a way, in that, not only are you trying to, get pregnant, but it's also something that's around the reproductive system. So that's always kind of scary. But I actually was a patient at Southeastern before Hayley was, because I utilized Southeastern for my cryopreservation process. And cancer was not a fun part, but it's obviously something that we overcame, just like we overcame this infertility journey. Had surgery and then did chemo in November of 2019. And then that ended in December, and because I just had to do one round, which was great. And so I've been cancer-free ever since.
Oh man, that's great. Well, we love that and hope and pray that continues to be the case. I mentioned that it was a long road. Cancer was part of it, but certainly not all of it. I mean, you guys have been married for more than a decade, right? Before you ended up having children. Hayley, talk about what experiencing infertility was like.
Obvious answer, it's hard. But it's isolating and frustrating and just exhausting.
Would it describe some of the ups and downs? I'm thinking of if somebody has just gotten an infertility diagnosis and is listening to this or watching this, it would be helpful. I mean, you guys went through the ringer.
We did. So I found out I was pregnant the first time 2 days after his cancer diagnosis, and we were like, really, this is some great time. And we thought, what odds to be pregnant, and that was about 6.5 months after we started trying to get pregnant, which in the grand scheme of things is not a long time. But then the day after his surgery, I got a call saying my blood work came back and there was no HCG, so it was a loss. And that was the first one, and I didn't really know what to think. I was in the middle of this, and I was frustrated. I was angry. And our former pastor's wife, we were kind of talking to them about it, and she said, "You're in a relationship with God, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Like any relationship here on earth, you have ups and downs, you have frustrations, you have anger that you need to talk through." She said, "It's okay that you're angry with God. It is okay." And that was something so helpful for me to say, okay, so I don't just have to be like, "Dear God, please help us." I can be like, "What the heck, dude? Why did you do this to us? Why did you just strike us while we're still on fire from the last lightning strike?" So that was helpful to me. And I know, tell me about it. That was something really helpful. And that was from the get-go. The first miscarriage that she said that. Chris agrees with that.
Yeah, you can hear him.
Yeah. But then she said something else to us after our second miscarriage. So we got pregnant in between surgery and chemo. It was our last chance to try before chemo, where he had to sign basically a contract with his oncologist saying, "I will not father a child for 6 months
Yeah.
chemo. So we were like, all right, we've got one more try. Got pregnant. And again, we were like, wow, this is incredible. This is wonderful. This timing is great. And he was in his second week of chemo, I think, when we lost that one. And I was like, what did we do wrong? What gives here? And she said to me, this former pastor's wife said, you guys are really going through it. One day, people are going to look at you and read your story as their survivor's guide. And when she said that, it was kind of like a change in mindset where I am suffering. I know. I am suffering, but other people are going to learn from my suffering and not benefit from my suffering, but
Well, no, it's true, but they will benefit. They will benefit in terms of spiritually, in terms of encouragement, and you can't discount that.
Yeah. And one thing I shared on social media after our second loss about miscarriage, because I had found a lot of comfort. I went on Instagram and just like searched miscarriage just to see like what people say about it. And I found so much comfort in that. And I was like, I'm going to share this so that someone else can. And after I shared, I was so nervous. Like, that's a really vulnerable thing to go through, having to share something that people don't talk about. It's like a off topic or off limits topic. But when I shared that, I got so many messages. Hey, I'm also a miscarriage mom. Like, I've been through this. And I decided after that, if my weakness can be someone else's strength or build someone else's strength, that it would be a beautiful thing to have purpose in my suffering. So going through it, as someone listening that is going through it, talk to someone, whether it's like I did, share on social media, or a therapist, or your friend group, or somebody. Talk to somebody, because it helps so much. Don't suffer alone at all.
That's a really, really good takeaway. Talk to somebody besides just your spouse, just besides just the two of you. Sam, what about you? Did you have any spiritual takeaways? I mean, there was so much going on. It must have just felt like you guys were getting hit from every angle with the cancer and the miscarriages, and you're wondering, will we ever become parents?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a journey that we had been on for a while, trying to, I think we both had these like hopes and dreams that we'd be parents by 28. And of course, we're 33 now, we've got our boys finally, but I think it's like those God laughs at our plans sometimes, because he's obviously got others. And the biggest thing I think that was hard for us is just like accepting. It was so hard to accept that that God was there in the midst when everything was so dark. There's a really great analogy though that our friend shared with us, that Brene Brown has this allegory of the pit. And so they shared that with us, and we very much felt like we were living in a pit where, nobody ever would try or want to understand our grief. And it took those friends that knew that pain they physically were in the pit with us. They carried that weight with us. And so in a lot of ways where our faith struggled, we relied on a lot of other people to have faith for us. And that carried us through a lot, because I think faith by proxy is a real thing, and that, just like we pray for people, I think we can believe for people, and a lot of people believed for us, and that got us through some very dark times, and we learned a lot from that pit experience, because we've seen how valuable that was for us. For people, we know God was in the pit, right? God doesn't leave. I think it feels like we are absent of God sometimes, but he's still there. And we just have to trust and know that no matter what, that's never going to change. But I think that God in our lives put people who could not only feel our pain with us and carry it for us in some ways, he also put people in our lives that could carry our belief for us and help us to continue to see the value of our relationship with God. Just like Hayley was saying about our pastor's wife that, told us it's okay to be angry, because I can assure you, we were very angry. And, there have been times that, and I think also like not having to feel bad about being angry. I mean, I think there's so many biblical examples of people crying out to God and just being like, especially David. I mean, look at how many times David cried out to God and was like, what the heck? You know what I mean? And you know, he was a man after God's own heart. And so if we can't take an example from David, then and he was mad at God, then who can we? So yeah, I mean, I think sharing has been so important for us. And you know, we needed that support though. Like, and I think if we hadn't shared some of the things that we've gone through, you know, it would have been harder for us to have that reliability of people helping us believe.
Well, those are real kindnesses from God, and you're absolutely right that the Bible, the Old Testament, the Psalms are particularly replete with lament. It is okay, and you should mentally prepare yourself. If you're going through infertility, there will be times when it feels like God is not there. You'll just feel an absence, and that is normal. And I love how you two have said it. You needed other people to believe for you, not just to pray for you, not just to have faith, to share your faith, and take it to God that way, but also to believe for you when you didn't feel like you could do it yourself. Was there ever a point, and we'll get to Chris and Carter in a second. They've been so well behaved. They really have been. But was there ever a point where you wanted to give up, or were you going all the way until you reached the destination?
I would say we gave up, but there was a point where, for me, I can't speak for Sam on this one, but for me, I just had to kind of give up thinking about it. Like we had medicated cycles for a long time, like just taking letrozole and unsuccessful. I got pregnant twice on letrozole and lost both of those. And then we were deciding what to do next, and we said, let's try IUI. So we tried one round, one IUI, and it failed. And after that, it was like infertility and pregnancy was consuming my whole being. And I said, I have to not think about it. I know. And you know, so many people will tell you that have been through this, the people who say, oh, just relax, it'll happen if you just relax. Okay. Like telling a cat to relax in water, like it's not gonna work. That's just, don't say that. But for me, it was just, we call it changing the channel. I believe his therapist said change the channel one time, and that was what I had to do, was just kind of turn it off for a little while. And I decided to turn it off, and then his mom got sick. That was in January of last year. She got sick and with cancer, and kind of our focus shifted to her, and she passed away in March. And after that, we had already started talking about potentially trying IVF. You know, it's a big expense, and it's a lot on your body, and it's just a lot. And it was something we had talked about, but we talked to Dr. Gordon about it. We had a little like consultation kind of thing, and that was our next try. So we were not really going into Southeastern Fertility looking to do IVF, but we were led in that direction. And I'm glad that I had to turn the channel, and we ended up doing IVF because, you know, we got these two from it. But I never wanted to give up. I knew I was going to be mom, no matter how I was going to be mom, whether it was through IVF or we just naturally conceived or adoption. Somehow I was going to be mom.
Did you think the same thing, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I always had a hope that we would be parents, and I knew that, you know, God had put us in this world to be more than just a married couple. And I knew that it was, you know, we were put on this earth to love others, whether that be our own DNA or not. We were prepared for that. You know, I think for me, you know, it was hard because like I had this like cancer diagnosis that kind of, while I was healed, and I did have like, you know, healthy, you know, fertility after, it was it's still on top of my mind, right? And so, you hear, just like Hayley said, people saying like, well, just relax, it'll happen, and all these kinds of things. I think the other really hard thing is like when people throw it back on God, right?
Yes.
So like they're putting God's plan on you, like trying to put words in God's mouth. And so they're saying, well, just trust, and just like, it's all in God's time. And that's very easy for other people to say, but it's very hard when you're in that pit to hear, other people say like, well, that's God's plan. Well, you don't actually know my relationship with God at this exact moment. And that's not exactly what I need to hear. So I think us, getting through the loss of my mom, and one of the last things that Hayley told my mom when she was on her deathbed, she took her by the hand and she looked at her and she said, listen, Corky, if you can't be here in this world, your job in the next is to like go pick out our kids. And so, it's just very serendipitous that, we happened to be blessed with these two a little bit later on in the year, through the pregnancy and everything, and IVF. But I was leery of the IVF process, to be honest with you. I was concerned because we had just seen so much loss in our lives in multiple ways, and I wasn't ready necessarily for another loss. I didn't want to see her go through it, and the emotional pain of that, the toll is tough. And at this point, we're both, kind of overcoming. We're kind of overcoming, like PTSD. I think that's a real thing in the infertility realm. And so like we both have, gone through some counseling and things like that, but, and we're still like, I'm still in counseling, but, I think once I was on board and I saw that, like this may be our route, we may have lost, but I know that, this is like probably our last chance to maybe biologically, have children of our own. I was on board, and it took a little bit of time, but I totally 100% supported the option.
I love a couple of things that you said there. Those are really good takeaways when you're talking to somebody who's having trouble getting pregnant. Don't say just relax, and don't say, God has a plan or this is his plan for you. Those are unhelpful things, however well intended the sentiments are.
And while maybe even true, it's still not what you necessarily want to hear, right?
Yeah. Just a true thing spoken at the wrong time doesn't do a whole lot of good. And I'm glad that you also pointed to the importance of going to therapy, and that it's a PTSD type experience, because it really is, and that can be helpful. And that's something that people should consider. So, okay, take me to the moment when these two were born. What was it like? Describe the thoughts and feelings that each of you was experiencing. This was just a few months ago, just this past winter.
5 months today.
Yeah.
They're 5 months old today. Well, the PTSD thing, let me tell you about that. The whole pregnancy, I was huge, right? Like, carrying twins, you're huge.
Yeah, of course.
I felt like, I don't know if you've seen the Truman Show, but I felt like I was in a simulation and everybody was in on it. And everybody was like, oh, look, she's pregnant. Ha, look, she's really not pregnant. This isn't really happening. Like this grand scheme to make me feel like I was getting what I wanted. And even after they were born, I'm like, I don't know. Is this real? I don't know. I mean, it just, I think in my brain, there's like a wall that has been built by all the loss. And for me to look in the mirror and accept a healthy pregnancy was blocked by that wall. And we were at a class at UT before they were born, and she said, no, I know exactly what you're saying. The nurse that was teaching it, she said, we went through this as well. We went through infertility and loss as well. And she said, that's how I felt too. And I was like, okay, so it has to do with how my chemistry now is to expect bad things. And even now, I haven't really said this to Sam, but even now, like I'll be going through some clothes at Target or something, and I'll see something that's like super clearance, that's a 2T, and I'm like, I can't buy two. What if something happens? Like, I'm still stuck in that mindset of expecting the worst.
Yeah, your brain has been rewired a little bit. Trauma does that.
Yeah. So when they were born, we had a wild delivery. So this precious sleeping angel here, Carter, we got to see him be born. I pushed him out. It was amazing, incredible moment. Even in the midst of me in that last push, I laughed. I was like, this isn't real. Like, this isn't actually happening. I truly could not believe that it was happening. And they plopped him down and I was like, hey, and that's all I could say was, hey, because I'm like, this is real life, like slap me. I don't know. It was just, I truly couldn't believe it. And not in like oh my gosh, I can't believe it, but in like this isn't really happening. That rewiring of my brain. Right. And then this guy, sweet little sleeping angel over here, he flipped, he went breech. And then his heart rate started to drop. So they were like, we got to go. So they got him, Carter and Dad. They kicked them out of the operating room because with twins, you deliver in the operating room because of instances like this. They knocked me out. So they put me under general anesthesia and did a C-section to deliver Chris. So wild, right? I had this, moment of bliss with Carter, and then everything just kind of was in slow motion around me. I knew what was happening. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't freaking out or anything. I was like, all right, here we go. And I didn't think that I was going to go home with this one. I thought we were going to lose Chris. But I didn't let myself get too deep in that thought, but also they slapped a mask on me and knocked me out. So I couldn't get that deep. So fast forward to when I wake up from anesthesia, he's sitting there with Carter, Sam's sitting there with Carter, and I can kind of see him out of the corner of my eye without my glasses on. And I'm like, where am I? What happened? Who is this? So I met Carter pretty groggy. I was really not fully there. So the moment, and I say met because when he plopped on my chest, before the cord cutting and all that, it was just like a out of body experience kind of moment. But I met him just in a total foggy state, and still kind of unbelievable in that moment. Right. I don't know. I don't remember a lot of it, which makes me so sad that I was robbed of those moments, that I didn't get to experience the typical feelings that you get when you have a baby, but really groggy with this one. And then when I met this one, I didn't meet him until 28 hours later because he got sent off to the NICU. And luckily Sam was able to be there with him, with both of them. My parents and his dad met both boys before I did and held both boys before I did. And I'm like, or no, I held Chris first. But I wasn't able to get down to the NICU until the next day to meet him. And that was just so emotional, seeing him, he had 2 IVs, one in each side of his head, and, the CPAP. Breathing CPAP thing on his face, and, the machines and stuff. That was just very emotional. And I just wept the whole time that I was in there. And even still looking at the pictures every time, it gets me. It was a weird kind of, I don't even want to call it joy, because I was scared for him. That part of my brain that's like, this is it, that wired part. But truly the emotions that most moms feel didn't come to me for a couple months. Those post-pregnancy hormones, those postpartum hormones are rough. And full disclosure, going on an antidepressant has helped me. Not being afraid of chemical help.
There is no shame in that.
No shame in that game. No. So it took a while for me to get to that. Wow, these are actually my kids. I cannot believe it. I mean, this one has red hair. I know you can't really see it. And I have red hair. So I'm like, I did that. I gave him red hair, It took a while for me to feel the
excitement, the jubilation, right? And I appreciate you being honest about that. That's not that uncommon, by the way. And it's good for people to know that. And of course, the postpartum depression can be very real. And Sam, I imagine, I'd be interested in hearing what your emotions and thoughts were as you went through all this, because yeah, I mean, I can just imagine you're overjoyed at least one safe arrival. Eventually you knew that the other was arriving safely, going to the NICU. But it's tough. It's sort of tempered enthusiasm, right? And you've got to be there for your wife, who understandably is struggling a bit.
Right. No, you're exactly right. I'll back up just a little bit in that. I think I felt like we were more pregnant than Hayley did throughout the pregnancy. Like it took her a long time to trust that it was going to happen. And I mean, as soon as I saw them, as soon as we found out we were pregnant, I like had this feeling we were going to have twins. And, we had our first scan, and Dr. Gordon was like, how many embryos did we transfer? And so, how many heartbeats are there? You know what I mean? So it was like it was just a great, joyous thing. And it was like so fitting that, we've been through all this pain and we finally were having two, which made it even scarier because you go through all the bad scenarios, what could happen. But, thankfully, God saw us through and we fought to believe. And, here we are now. But yeah, when we were going through the birthing process and the labor process, it was tough. Especially I was extremely emotional in the delivery room. We had a playlist playing that we brought in there. And, when you deliver twins in the OR, there are about 30 to 40 people in the room when you have them, especially if something kind of goes wrong. And so we had a very large cohort of medical professionals, which made us feel great. But it also makes you feel a little bit nervous too. So they dim the lights, we have music going. And right before Hayley gave birth to Carter, the Etta James song At Last played, and I bawled like a child. That song, I can't hear it now and not bawl. Everybody was very emotional in the operating room. And then, we had Carter. I got to cut the cord, and that was all super exciting. Just like Hayley said, it's like we were on cloud nine. We were still kind of foggy about it all because she had labored for well over 36 hours and pushed for 4.5. So it was a long process. So to new dads and new moms, don't be terrified if it takes a long time. But things kind of switched. The room kind of went a little different. And I felt like you could kind of feel the air had changed when things got ready for Chris to come. And when they pushed me out, I think I kind of went into shock a little bit. And thankfully I was able to rely on the support of my in-laws and my dad to come help during that period of time, because I definitely needed the help. And then, they called me right after they'd gotten Chris kind of settled, and I walked with him from the operating room to the NICU, and he was in great hands there at UT. We can only say great things about UT Medical Center and their labor and delivery and NICU teams locally. And then, I left him there with them, which we knew, and he had 15 people with him. He was fine. And so I was able to go back and take care of Carter, and then finally got to, introduce him finally to Hayley, which was just like the biggest blessing ever. It's all scary though, because, not only did I think I was losing this one, I also thought I was losing her because she lost a lot of blood, unfortunately. And just to make sure people know, this is not necessarily a typical situation. This is very
that's not typical, not at all.
At all. And so, people like to tell us all the time, we don't do anything the easy way, which I can assure you we don't. We don't try to do it the hard way, but we typically don't do anything the easy way. Yeah. The Lord's put it in our lives to take the hard route sometimes, but that's okay. We've persevered and we've got them here now. I mean, they're so healthy and they're so happy. I mean, this guy who had NICU time for 5 days, he's 2 pounds bigger than his brother and 1.5 inches longer. I mean, like, he was the little bitty one, So we definitely have seen so much faith in them, just in that, like, we can look at them and I think Hayley and I agree on this, but like, we know my mom had her hand on these boys before they came. I think she was really pleading with God that these were going to be our boys. And, we take great joy and pride in the fact that, not only have they had the hands of God on them, they've had the hands of mom on them too, which is really, really special for us.
She'll always be a part of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Even though she never met him this side of eternity. And that is really special. They look like they couldn't be healthier.
Yeah, they're extremely healthy.
Truly perfect
little
boys. I mean, we never had any issues with colic or any sleeping issues. Like, they turned 3 months old, and then within a couple of days of each other, they were like, hey, let's sleep through the night.
10
So
to
they
12
started
hours. I mean, it's
sleeping through the
amazing.
night. We put them in their cribs this week, and they're sleeping like wonderfully in their
champs.
cribs. And
They eat like champs.
Yep.
They're great. They're really good babies. Good
Mhm.
temperaments. So
Mhm.
yeah, we're very blessed.
Don't fight it. Yeah.
No,
Nope.
we're not going to. We
Let
thank
it-
our lucky stars every night that this is the way they are.
Yep.
So
Any other advice before we go for couples going through the same struggles you did? I mean, you've given us so many takeaways. And anything else that you'd want to end with?
I would just say, I think one of the biggest blessings in our lives was we shared a lot. And some people were like, I don't know how you do that. Or like, I think maybe it threw people off that like we were just so extremely vulnerable with our stories, starting with my cancer journey, and then rolling into our cancer and loss journeys, and then losing mom. Like we were just very open because honestly, what's the point of pain if you're not going to use it to help somebody else? And while that's not everybody's journey to share, I think that we've had a lot of people reach out to us and thank us for our vulnerability, and they have in some cases found empowerment through us telling our stories. Again, like I said, that's not everybody's called into the ministry, and not everybody's called into to sharing things like that. And for us, it was a blessing more for us. It was cathartic in some ways to get things out. My other big thing is I kept a journal, and I wrote letters to our losses. I think we've both been very open. We've found a lot of healing in tattoos. We've both have kind of formalized some of our pains and things into our tattoos, and so that's been a big blessing for us. But yeah, I would say writing's been great for me. I don't know as much for Hayley, but talking about it. And I think the other piece of advice for people that aren't necessarily going through infertility, but maybe are supporting people who are going through infertility or pregnancy losses, silence is terribly deafening. And when you don't hear from people because they feel uncomfortable about talking to you, it makes you feel like you're the smallest person in the world. And if anything, just saying, I have no clue what to say to that person, that is like, that honestly is sometimes better than some of the best things people can say, because, they're being as authentic as they possibly can be and saying that I will never be able to necessarily relate to your pain and the loss that you're going through, but I care. And that's all that matters, because the silence is just so hard to deal with, and the distance sometimes people put, because it's awkward. It's hard for people to understand when they haven't been through it, or, they may have not had any troubles getting pregnant. And we thank God daily that we have friends and there are people out there that have no trouble with getting pregnant. And we're so glad that, God brings those lives into the world. But, at the same time, there's people like us that struggle a lot. And sometimes you just need a word from people. And so that was like very opening and eye-opening for us. But also this whole loss journey has helped us figure out how we can best support other people, not only through loss, but through different types of trauma in life or grief.
Yeah, through anything, because there are similarities with all types of grief, sorrow, trauma, these sorts of enduring stress situations. Hayley, anything else you would add?
Yeah, my 3 biggest takeaways would be: you're not alone. It's not your fault, and your feelings are valid. If you're angry, it's valid. If you're jealous, it's valid. If you don't want to go to a baby shower or a gender reveal party, you don't have to, and you don't have to explain yourself. You owe nothing to anyone. Sam and I are always open. I will never say no to someone who wants to talk about it. I will never say no, because it's been therapeutic for me to talk about it. And going through someone I worked with, she was going through it too, and she said, hey, I know we don't talk a lot, but I've seen your post and I know you've gone through this. Can you just talk to me? And I will never say no to you. And she's got a baby now. They're a month apart, but we leaned on each other. We bonded because of that. And I told her that, I was like, God put you at this school because I needed you, and you might have needed me. I don't know, but just, you're not alone. Don't struggle in silence. Don't suffer in silence, ever.
So good. And what a great note on which to end this podcast. Yeah, you guys are terrific. We love you. And thank you for setting aside the time. And congratulations on having maybe at least one red-headed kid. I'm also married to a redhead. And our two kids, we didn't have a redhead. So, that's, you're very blessed.
Yeah.
Well, this one's bald just like me. So
Yeah, you got my
we
hair.
both
got yours.
got one like us. So
I love it, and we're so happy for you guys. What a terrific conversation. And by the way, if you're interested in learning more about Southeastern Fertility, you can just go to our website, southeasternfertility.org. You can do a free 15-minute telemedicine consult with Dr. Gordon, like Sam and Hayley did, and look where it led. I'm Mark Mellinger. This has been Hope, Faith, and Infertility.